The moment Sebastian burst into my engagement party at the downtown Chicago rooftop venue and locked eyes with me across the crowded room, I knew my life was about to explode in ways I could never undo. "Ronan, stop this right now. I love you and I can't stand by and watch you marry someone else when we've shared everything we have these past 2 years." He said, his voice cutting through the jazz music and laughter like a blade that sliced every conversation to silence. Gasps rippled through the 50 guests as my fiancée Emily dropped her champagne glass, shattering it on the marble floor, while my parents, who had driven all the way from their quiet Ohio hometown for what they believed was my perfect future, stared in frozen disbelief. Sebastian, my best friend since our NYU days, and the only man who had ever truly seen me, stood there tall and unapologetic in his tailored navy suit, his blue eyes burning with a mixture of fear and absolute resolve. The room felt like it tilted, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, louder than the sudden murmurs spreading like wildfire. I grabbed his arm and pulled him out onto the dimly lit terrace, where the city lights twinkled below us, the cool night air doing nothing to calm the storm inside my chest. "What the hell are you doing, Sebastian? You just ruined everything, my family, my future, everything I built to make them proud." I hissed, my voice shaking as the weight of 2 years of secret nights and hidden touches crashed over me. He didn't flinch. Instead, he took my hands in his, the warmth of his palms grounding me even as the world spun. "No more hiding, Ronan. I swear right here and now I will stay by your side forever, no matter what comes next. We deserve to live this love out loud." His words hung between us, full of a promise that felt both beautiful and terrifying, because I knew in that instant the vow had been made and there was no taking it back. We had met in college during a brutal group project in our sophomore year, two guys from completely different worlds. I was the all-American marketing major from a conservative Catholic family who still sent me Bible verses every Sunday. Sebastian was the sharp-witted pre-law student who came out in high school and never looked back. Our friendship started innocent enough, late-night study sessions in the library turning into deep talks about dreams and fears. Then one rainy night, after too many beers in his cramped off-campus apartment, everything changed with a single kiss that neither of us expected but both of us needed. For the next 2 years we kept it buried, meeting in hidden corners of New York City, stealing weekends in cheap motels, or his Brooklyn walk-up where the walls knew our secrets better than anyone. I dated women to keep up appearances, even proposed to Emily 6 months ago because my parents kept asking when I would settle down and give them grandkids. Sebastian never pushed, but I saw the pain in his eyes every time I posted another photo of us as just friends. Now at 28, with a solid job at a top Chicago marketing firm and a ring on Emily's finger, the secret was out in the most public way possible. My mother called within minutes, her voice breaking over the phone. "Ronan, is this true? How could you lie to your own family like this? What will Father Michael say at church?" My father said nothing at first, then simply hung up, the silence louder than any shout. Emily left the party in tears, texting me later demanding answers I couldn't give without breaking more hearts. Friends from the party flooded my phone, some offering confused support, others sending judgmental messages that stung like salt in an open wound. The next morning I woke up in Sebastian's Brooklyn apartment after we had driven back to New York in silence, the city lights still twinkling outside his window like nothing had changed when everything had. He made coffee and sat across from me, those intense eyes steady. "I meant every word last night. I will stay by your side forever, Ronan. We can face this together if you let me." I wanted to believe him more than anything, but the fear was already wrapping around my throat like a vice. Society in America had come a long way, yet for someone like me raised on traditional values, the pressure felt suffocating. I pictured the whispers at work, the awkward silences at family holidays, the looks from neighbors back home. Yet when Sebastian reached for my hand across the table, I felt the same spark that had kept me coming back all these years. That afternoon we talked for hours, revisiting every misunderstanding, the night I almost told my sister but chickened out, the weekend Sebastian saw me with Emily at a company event and almost walked away for good. His loyalty had always been rock solid, but my internal battle raged louder than ever. By evening we decided to take the first small step, going public, gradually starting with holding hands openly at a quiet Italian restaurant near his place. The waiter smiled knowingly, but as we left, a former colleague from my old internship spotted us and the rumors began spreading faster than I could control. The psychological weight pressed down hard, making me question if this vow was worth the destruction already unfolding. My family had booked flights to confront me in person, and I knew the real storm was only beginning. Sebastian stayed close, his presence a constant reminder of the love we shared, but also the sacrifices it would demand from both of us. Little did I know how many more bonds would snap before we could even begin to rebuild. My parents arrived 2 days later, their faces etched with exhaustion and disappointment as they stepped into the small cafe near my office in Chicago where I had agreed to meet them alone. Sebastian had offered to come, but I refused, knowing his presence would only make the conversation explode faster. My mother hugged me tightly at first, then pulled back, searching my eyes for the son she thought she knew. "Ronan, we raised you better than this. The Bible is clear, and now the whole family knows. Your aunt called this morning crying." My father sat rigid across the table, his hands clasped so tightly the knuckles turned white, refusing to look at me directly. I tried to explain the years of confusion, the way Sebastian made me feel seen in a world that always demanded I fit a certain mold, but every word sounded like an excuse even to my own ears. The misunderstanding hit hardest when my mother asked if Emily had known all along, and I had to admit the guilt I carried for stringing her along while my heart belonged elsewhere. Back in New York, that same evening, Sebastian waited in his apartment, the table set with takeout and candles, trying to create some sense of normalcy. "How did it go?" he asked, gently pulling me into his arms the moment I walked through the door. I told him everything, the tears, the accusations, the way my father finally spoke, only to say he needed time to pray on it. Sebastian listened without interrupting, his hand rubbing circles on my back the way he always did when things got heavy. Yet a small crack appeared when I mentioned my sister's text calling Sebastian a homewrecker, and he stiffened. "They don't know me, Ronan. They only see what they want to see." His tone carried an edge I hadn't heard before, and for the first time I wondered if his vow came from love or from years of frustration at staying hidden. We argued softly that night, not yelling, but the words carried weight about whether I was truly ready to choose him over the family that raised me. The following week at work, the tension became unbearable. Colleagues who once grabbed lunch with me now avoided eye contact, while my boss pulled me into a private meeting to discuss company image and how the rumors might affect client meetings. I defended myself calmly, explaining that my personal life had no bearing on my performance, but inside I felt the foundation of my career shaking. Sebastian's law firm remained more supportive, his partners even joking about finally meeting the mysterious Ronan, but the contrast only highlighted how different our worlds still were. One night, after a particularly rough day, I came home to find Sebastian on the phone with his own mother, who had always been accepting, yet even she asked if rushing into this public declaration was wise. The conversation ended with him hanging up frustrated, and for the first time I saw the cost his vow was extracting from him too. A misunderstanding escalated when my best friend from college, Jake, called, demanding to know why I never trusted him with the truth. "I thought we told each other everything, man. Now I find out from Instagram comments." His hurt felt like another betrayal layered on top of my family's, and I snapped back, defending my silence as protection. Sebastian overheard and later asked why I still cared so much about what straight friends thought. The question stung because it forced me to confront how much of my identity I had tied to pleasing others. We spent the weekend driving upstate, trying to escape the noise, hiking through quiet trails where we could hold hands without fear. Under the autumn leaves, Sebastian reminded me of the vow again, whispering it like a prayer while we watched the sunset. "Forever means I'm here through every storm, Ronan." His words soothed the raw edges, but the psychological toll was mounting. Friends began taking sides, some unfollowing me on social media, others sending private messages of support that felt hollow against the family silence. By the end of the week, my sister arrived unannounced at Sebastian's door, her eyes red from crying. She wanted answers, demanded to know if this was a phase or if I had been lying my whole life. Sebastian stayed in the background, respectful yet present, and the conversation stretched late into the night. She left with a tentative hug, but the damage lingered. That night, as Sebastian and I lay awake staring at the ceiling, he turned to me and said, "I never wanted to force you into this, but I couldn't watch you disappear into a life that wasn't yours." His honesty cracked something open inside me, and I pulled him close, realizing the vow wasn't just words, it was a daily choice we both had to keep making. The conflict kept building though, because deep down I still wondered if love this strong could survive the fractures it had already caused. Work pressure intensified with a big client meeting looming, and I knew I had to decide soon whether to lean fully into this new reality or risk losing Sebastian in the process. The psychological weight pressed harder every day, but his unwavering presence reminded me why I had said yes to forever in the first place, even if the path ahead looked impossible. The client meeting went better than expected, yet the victory felt hollow as I sat in my office afterwards staring at the congratulatory email, while my mind replayed the latest text from my father asking if I had come to my senses yet. Sebastian surprised me with lunch delivery, his way of showing support without crowding my space at work. We ate quickly on the rooftop terrace, talking about everything except the growing rift with my family. Then the first real betrayal came from an unexpected place. My college roommate Derek, who I thought was an ally, posted a vague social media story about people hiding who they really are and hurting everyone around them. The comments flooded in, tagging me indirectly, and the pain cut deep because Derek had known about Sebastian for months in confidence. I confronted him over the phone, and the conversation turned ugly with accusations flying about loyalty and how my choices affected our entire friend group. Sebastian listened quietly when I told him later, his jaw tight with anger he hadn't shown before. This is exactly why I pushed for the truth, Ronan. Secrets always find a way to poison everything. That weekend we attended a small LGBT community event in Brooklyn, hoping for some breathing room, but even there the outside world intruded when an old family friend recognized me and quickly looked away. The incident triggered a long conversation back at the apartment where Sebastian opened up about his own past relationship in law school that ended because his partner couldn't handle the pressure from conservative relatives. The revelation hit me like a wave because I had always seen Sebastian as the strong one, the one who never wavered. For the first time doubt crept in, and I asked if his vow to me was partly about proving something to himself. He didn't get defensive, but the air between us grew heavy with the first crack in our foundation. We reconciled with a quiet embrace, but the psychological scar remained. Work became a minefield when human resources scheduled a meeting about workplace inclusivity that felt pointed directly at me. I kept my composure, explaining my situation professionally, yet inside I felt exposed and vulnerable in ways I never had. Sebastian's support never faltered. He cooked dinner every night and left notes reminding me of the forever we promised. Yet when my mother called crying about how the church prayer group was praying for my healing, I broke down in his arms, questioning if love could really be worth this much pain. He held me tighter, whispering the vow again like an anchor, but I could sense his own exhaustion building. A major turning point arrived when Sebastian received an offer for a prestigious position at a firm in California, the kind of opportunity he had dreamed about since college. He turned it down without hesitation, saying, "My place is here with you, Ronan. Forever means I choose us over everything." His sacrifice should have felt romantic, but instead it amplified my guilt because I knew how much he was giving up. The misunderstanding deepened when I suggested we visit my parents together to try and bridge the gap. Sebastian agreed, but during the tense dinner at their Chicago home, my father directed most of his questions at him in a way that felt like interrogation. Sebastian answered with respect, but later in the hotel room, he admitted the visit had shaken him more than he expected. "I thought I was strong enough, but seeing how they look at you like you're broken, it kills me." We argued for the first time about whether pushing for acceptance was worth the constant emotional drain. The night ended with us falling asleep back to back, the distance small but significant. The next morning we drove back to New York in silence, each lost in our thoughts. Friends who had once been neutral now distanced themselves further after Derek's post gained traction, and the isolation started to feel suffocating. Sebastian suggested therapy, and we booked our first joint session where the counselor helped us name the fear, the guilt, and the love that kept pulling us forward. By the end of the month, the pressure peaked when my company announced layoffs and my name appeared on the list of those at risk. The news came on the same day Sebastian's mother called, urging him to reconsider the California offer. I told him to take it if it was what he wanted, but he refused again, reaffirming the vow with quiet determination. His loyalty moved me deeply, yet the growing pile of sacrifices made me question if I was strong enough to carry my half of forever. We spent the evening walking along the Brooklyn waterfront talking about the future. We wanted a small apartment, maybe a dog, simple things that felt impossible under the weight of everything crumbling around us. The psychological consequences of every decision were becoming clearer, each choice rippling out and changing us in ways we couldn't predict. Yet as Sebastian squeezed my hand under the streetlights, I felt the spark that started it all and knew walking away wasn't an option. The storm was far from over, but the vow we made that night at the engagement party had become the only constant in a world that no longer made sense. The layoff notice became official the following Monday, and I found myself packing my desk while colleagues offered awkward condolences, some genuine, others laced with the same judgment I had grown used to. Sebastian met me outside the building with coffee and a plan insisting we turn the setback into an opportunity to rebuild on our own terms. His optimism felt forced though, and during our next therapy session, the counselor gently pointed out how my career loss had triggered deeper fears of not being enough for the life we wanted. That night Sebastian revealed more about his past, the ex from law school who had left because of family pressure, and how that breakup had made him swear never to hide again. The confession explained his determination, but it also planted a seed of insecurity in me, wondering if I was just another chapter in his fight against the world. A major misunderstanding erupted when I received a message from Emily asking to meet for closure. I agreed thinking it would help tie up loose ends, but Sebastian saw the text and assumed I was reconsidering my choices. The argument that followed was raw and painful, with him accusing me of still wanting the straight life I had planned and me defending my right to say goodbye properly. We didn't speak for 2 days, the longest silence since the vow, and the emptiness felt unbearable. When we finally reconciled, Sebastian admitted his jealousy came from fear of losing me to the expectations that once defined me. The honesty brought us closer, but the emotional scars lingered, reminding us both how fragile trust could be under constant external pressure. My family's silence broke when my sister called with news that my father had suffered a mild heart scare, the stress from everything weighing on him. The guilt hit me like a freight train, and I booked a flight to Ohio immediately. Sebastian offered to come, but I insisted on going alone, knowing his presence would only complicate an already delicate situation. In the hospital room, my father looked smaller, frilier, and for the first time he spoke openly about his fears of what the future held for me in a world he didn't understand. My mother stood by quietly, tears streaming, as I explained that my love for Sebastian wasn't a choice, it was who I was. The conversation didn't end in hugs or acceptance, but it ended without slammed doors, and that small progress felt like a victory. Back in New York, Sebastian had been researching freelance opportunities for me, turning the layoff into a chance to start my own consulting business. His support was unwavering, yet when I shared the hospital details, he pulled me close and whispered the vow again like a lifeline. The turning point came during a quiet evening when we sat on the fire escape watching the city lights, and he admitted that turning down California had been harder than he let on. "I did it because I love you, Ronan, but I need you to fight for us too." His words forced me to confront my own hesitations, and I promised to step up fully, no more half measures. The next weeks blurred into a whirlwind of building the business, networking events, and late nights where Sebastian helped with legal paperwork, his expertise a steady anchor. Yet the societal pressure refused to ease when a local news story about LGBT rights in conservative communities went viral, and my extended family began sharing posts that indirectly condemned us. The psychological toll mounted, with sleepless nights and moments where I questioned if the vow was worth every broken relationship. Sebastian sensed the doubt and planned a weekend getaway to a cabin upstate where we could unplug. There in the quiet woods we talked for hours about the future we envisioned, kids through adoption, a home filled with books and laughter, the kind of life that felt worth every sacrifice. The trip renewed our strength, but upon returning we faced another blow when Derek reached out, apologizing yet revealing that several mutual friends had cut ties permanently. The loss hurt, but Sebastian's steady presence reminded me that the family we chose could be stronger than the one we were born into. As winter approached, the business started gaining traction, small clients turning into steady income, and for the first time I felt like I was building something that belonged to both of us. The major turning point solidified when Sebastian's old law firm offered him a partnership, but with the condition of relocating. He turned it down again without hesitation, and in that moment I realized the depth of his commitment. We celebrated with a simple dinner where he slid a small key across the table, the key to a larger apartment we could share openly. The gesture symbolized everything the vow had promised, and as we walked home hand in hand under the glowing streetlights, I felt the first real hope that we might survive the destruction we had caused. The emotional growth was slow and painful, but each step forward proved that facing the truth about ourselves had changed us for the better, even if the path remained littered with consequences. The new apartment felt like a fresh start with sunlight streaming through larger windows and enough space for both our careers to breathe. Yet the calm shattered when my mother called one morning, her voice trembling with news that my father had taken a turn for the worse, and the doctors suspected the stress from our situation played a role. The guilt returned tenfold, and I flew to Ohio again, this time with Sebastian insisting he come along to stand beside me no matter what. The hospital visit became the emotional climax I had dreaded, my father pale in the bed looking at both of us for the first time without immediate anger. He spoke slowly, asking Sebastian directly why he thought this love was worth tearing our family apart. Sebastian answered with quiet dignity, explaining the years of friendship, the genuine connection, and the vow he had made to protect me from a life of hiding. My mother listened, tears falling, and for the first time she reached out and squeezed Sebastian's hand. The moment wasn't full acceptance, but it was a crack in the wall large enough for hope to slip through. Back home, the business hit a milestone, landing a major contract that required travel, and for the first time I asked Sebastian to join me on the road, turning work into shared adventure. The trip to California, ironically the same place he had sacrificed, brought laughter and closeness we hadn't felt since the confession night. Yet upon return, another misunderstanding surfaced when an old photo of me with Emily resurfaced online, sparking fresh rumors that I was confused. Sebastian saw the comments and withdrew briefly, the old fear resurfacing until I sat him down and reaffirmed my choice in words as strong as his original vow. The conversation cleared the air and strengthened our bond, proving that every misunderstanding could be overcome if we chose honesty. The real sacrifice came when Sebastian received a call from his estranged father, who had never accepted his sexuality, demanding a meeting to discuss inheritance issues tied to family values. Sebastian went alone, returning hours later visibly shaken but resolute in his decision to walk away from any conditional money. "I already have everything I need with you, Ronan," he said that night, his voice steady despite the pain. His choice mirrored the one I had made months earlier, and in that symmetry I saw how far we had both grown. The psychological consequences of these decisions weighed heavily, yet they also forged a resilience neither of us knew we possessed. Friends who had distanced themselves slowly trickled back, some offering genuine apologies, others simply checking in, and the gradual rebuilding felt like proof that time and truth could heal what the initial shock had broken. Winter turned to spring, and with it came the first family dinner where my sister and her husband joined us in New York. The evening was awkward at first, but laughter eventually broke through when Sebastian shared stories from our college days, carefully avoiding the painful parts. My mother even sent a text afterward saying she was trying to understand, and that small gesture carried more weight than any grand declaration. The business continued to flourish, allowing us to plan a quiet commitment ceremony with only close friends, no big spectacle, just a promise made public on our terms. As we prepared, Sebastian and I spent evenings talking about the journey, the misunderstandings, the betrayals, the sacrifices, and the unexpected beauty that emerged from the ruins. The emotional climax peaked one night on the same rooftop where the confession began, when I turned to him and said, "I'm ready to vow forever right here where it all started." His smile in the glowing city light erased every doubt, and we stood there holding each other as the past finally released its grip. The growth showed in small ways, Sebastian taking time for self-care after years of carrying the emotional load, and me reaching out to my father with regular calls that slowly rebuilt a fragile bridge. Societal pressures still existed in subtle ways, but they no longer defined us. We had faced the worst and emerged stronger, proving that the decision to love openly, even when it shattered everything, had been the right one for the men we were becoming. The journey wasn't over, but the foundation we built felt unbreakable, and as spring flowers bloomed outside our window, I knew the vow had not only survived, it had transformed us both. Summer arrived with longer days and a sense of possibility that felt earned after months of navigating the fallout. Our commitment ceremony took place in a small park overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge, with only 20 people present, including my sister and a few reconciled friends. Sebastian stood across from me in a simple white shirt, his eyes reflecting the same intensity from that fateful engagement night. When we exchanged rings and repeated the vow we had made in private so many months ago, the words carried new depth, forged through every trial. My mother watched from the front row, her hand resting on my father's arm, both of them present, even if full understanding still felt distant. The moment wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and the applause that followed felt like the first real acceptance we had received from the world that once tried to tear us apart. Life settled into a rhythm we both cherished, with my consulting business thriving and Sebastian making partner at his firm without having to relocate. We adopted a rescue dog named Atlas, a constant reminder that carrying the weight together made it lighter. Evenings were spent cooking together, sharing stories from the day, and occasionally revisiting the early days with laughter instead of regret. The psychological scars remained faint lines that proved we had survived, but they no longer dictated our choices. Friends who had walked away gradually returned, some with apologies that healed old wounds, others simply showing up without explanation. The family rift softened further when my father sent a birthday card addressed to both of us, the first acknowledgement that Sebastian was part of my life permanently. Yet the journey continued to test us in smaller ways, like the time a client pulled out after learning about our relationship, forcing us to lean on each other for strength. Each challenge reinforced the growth we had achieved, the ability to face consequences without losing ourselves. Sebastian's quiet strength and my newfound courage created a partnership stronger than either of us could have imagined on that chaotic night when everything shattered. We traveled when we could, visiting places that once felt off-limits together, walking hand in hand in cities where no one knew our story, and simply being. The love that started in secret had become the most visible part of who we were, and the freedom that brought was worth every sacrifice. As autumn leaves began to fall again, we sat on our rooftop, reflecting on the path from confession to commitment. The misunderstandings, the betrayals, the family expectations, and societal pressures had all played their roles, but they had also shaped us into better men who understood that true acceptance began within. Sebastian turned to me, his hand finding mine in the familiar way that always grounded me. "Forever still feels right, doesn't it?" he asked, and I answered with a kiss that held every promise we had kept. The city hummed below us, alive with possibility, and for the first time the future stretched out without the shadow of fear. We had rebuilt what the vow had broken, and in doing so discovered a version of love that was deeper, more honest, and entirely our own. The journey of self-identity, love, and acceptance had changed everything, yet it had also given us something priceless, a life lived without hiding. As we watched the sunset paint the skyline in glowing colors, I realized the decision that once seemed to destroy my world had actually created a new one, stronger and more authentic than anything I could have planned. Our story wasn't a fairy tale, but it was real, and that made it beautiful. True or false? A vow of forever love between two men is always worth the destruction it can cause in a traditional world?